This is a map of Canada, and this is a map of Canada's network of roads. There are several interesting things about Canada's network of roads, such as its utilization of ferries, and the fact that there is one single bridge connecting East and West Canada, which has led to some complications in the past. However, one thing that some people may be surprised to hear is that Canada's road network goes from sea to sea to sea. Canada has a highway that not only goes north of the Arctic Circle, like another North American highway, Alaska State Route 11, but unlike that highway, it actually reaches the Arctic Ocean. That highway is the Inuvik-Tuktoyaktuk Highway. In addition to this highway, I'll also be focusing on the Dempster Highway. The Inuvik-Tuktoyaktuk Highway is pretty much an extension of that highway. The Dempster Highway is a 458-mile-long all-river road, which begins east of the Yukon city of Dawson City, which has a population of 1,577, and ends in the town of Inuvik, Northwest Territories, which has a population of 3,137. The Inuvik-Tuktoyaktuk Highway, as the name may imply, is a road that connects Inuvik and Tuktoyaktuk, two towns north of the Arctic Circle located in Northwest Territories. Tuktoyaktuk, with its population of 937, sits on the coast of the Arctic Ocean. I'll be referring to the route as the Inuvik-Tuk Highway for the rest of this video, as Tuk is a short alternative name for Tuktoyaktuk. Anyways, this route spans 86 miles. Most of the landscape it travels through is tundra, so aren't going to be seeing many trees, especially as you get closer to the Arctic Ocean. Sorry, tree lovers. On the bright side though, this means that snow often just blows off the highway, so you won't have to deal with mounting layers of snow. Also, keep on the lookout as you roast Tuk for pingos. These things. There's an entire protected national landmark dedicated to them, as the area around Tuk has the greatest concentration of pingos in the world. While traveling on the Dempster Highway, meanwhile, you'll see a lot more trees, specifically conifers. Most of Yukon is classified as subarctic, a climate that overlaps pretty heavily with the taiga. One point of interest that the Dempster Highway passes through is the Tombstone Territorial Park, which houses plenty of wildlife and has a very diverse landscape. The route also crosses several rivers, such as the Klondike River near the southern terminus of the route, Eagle River, Peel River, and Mackenzie River. The latter two rivers are crossed by ferry or ice bridge, depending on the time of year. Fun fact to share at the dinner table: in North America, the Mackenzie River is second only to the Mississippi River in drainage basin size. The Dempster Highway also crosses over two mountain ranges, the Olgavai Mountains and the Richardson Mountains. Also, I didn't mention this earlier, but the route crosses the Arctic Circle around mile 252. When looking at the Dempster Highway, one may wonder why. Why would the Canadians choose to build a road in order to connect an isolated Arctic town like Inuvik to the rest of Canada? Exploration. Specifically, exploration for oil. Also, Inuvik was still under construction at the time, a feat of engineering itself. They were originally planning to build the road to a town named Aklavik, Northwest Territories, but ultimately settled on Inuvik. Aklavik had its fair share of problems, like flooding and erosion, and the government decided to create Inuvik from scratch as a sort of replacement. Anyways, construction of the highway began in 1959. Progress was quite slow, the road washed out on several occasions, and the oil, you know, the driving force behind the construction of this route in the first place, wasn't as plentiful as they originally thought, and the oil wells were performing poorly. So progress halted in 1962. Now I think it's a pretty good time to talk about just what kind of beast those constructing the road were up against. Permafrost. Ground that is continuously frozen for at least 2 years. Due to the moisture content of the soil, this means that if you're building a highway or doing anything disruptive, the ground will essentially turn into mush. This makes constructing anything in the Arctic an absolute headache to deal with. If there is anything permafrost hates, it is any kind of heat transfer. Therefore, you'll want to insulate the permafrost somehow, like using gravel as a roadbed. Alright, so it's 1970 now, and guess what? The Americans found oil in Alaska, specifically Purdue Bay. Maybe a pipeline will follow the route, now known as the Dempster Highway. A pipeline would never follow the route, but there is a pipeline following Alaska State Route 11. This would be enough of a motivator to finish the route in 1978, with the route being open to the public in 1979, 20 years after construction began. For decades, Inuvik, now an incorporated municipality by the way, would be as far north as you get using the Canadian road network. Inuvik, a very isolated Arctic town close to the border between taiga and tundra, was now accessible to many. The reduced cost of imported goods was definitely a welcome change. However, some Canadians already had the ambitious goal of building a road to the Arctic Ocean. There was an ice road that connected Inuvik and Tuk during the winter and early spring, but they weren't going to settle for that. Canada also cares a lot about their Arctic sovereignty. A highway like this would increase their presence in the Arctic. Construction of the Inuvik-Tuk Highway would finally begin in January 2014. Unlike with the Dempster Highway, the Inuvik-Tuk Highway would utilize geotextiles in order to protect the permafrost. Remember what I said earlier about heat transfer? The way they went about constructing the highway is quite interesting. Construction began on both terminuses of the route. On the Tuk side, the road weaves between lakes. Besides that, the landscape is quite flat. It was easier to complete than Inuvik side, or at least as easy as completing a road in the Arctic could be. Construction still took place during the winter, because again, permafrost. It always has to be permafrost. Better to be permafrozen than to disturb the permafrost. 90% of the ground is water, and the surface moves during the summer when it gets warm outside. And let me remind you that construction, again, took place in the winter, in the Arctic Circle, in the dark, for 24 hours. Also, there's wind and therefore bitterly cold wind chill values. And did I mention that it's winter and that it'll be cold outside? In April 2016, both sides of the project met in the middle. The scene looked like this. I'd like to compare the scene to the connecting of the Central Pacific Railroad to the Union Pacific Railroad. There was no ice pack hammered into the road. That would have been cool. But what is cool is the Arctic Ocean, and they had done it. They had connected the rest of Canada, and by extension, the rest of North America, to the Arctic Ocean. There was still work to be done, of course. November 15th, 2017. History was made. The highway was completed and open to the public. Finally, Canada was connected by road to all of its coasts. But it wasn't just about Canada. You can now potentially drive from Panama to the Arctic Ocean. Before this route's completion, the closest you could get to the Arctic Ocean using the North American Road Network was Deadhorse, Alaska, using Alaska State Route 11. Deadhorse. What kind of name is Deadhorse? Anyway, if I ever get the opportunity to drive up to the Arctic Ocean, I'll certainly take the opportunity. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I've probably been mispronouncing half the words in this video. Okay, bye.